All righty. So, Rosemary Ravinal and I go way back. Latinos say that, but this is true. She was in the first class of the National Hispano Leadership Institute when we started way back in the 80s. And boy, has she gone places. You know, she's an expert in presentation skills, public speaking, and media readiness. And she did such a fabulous job on our webinar this year that we said, you got to come back and help us, Rosemary. We need these skills now, these strategy skills on how to be more effective on Zoom. She is a communication expert, and for 3 decades, she worked in the U.S. mainstream, in Hispanic and Latin American markets, nonprofit organizations, and agencies in New York and South Florida. She has worked with organizations like Univision, Azteca America, Goya Foods, Toyota, Sony, AT&T, and the Hispanic Public Relations Association. She's an internationally known facilitator and holds a Master's of Science in Global and Strategic Communications from Florida International University. Rosemary, thank you for your generosity and for being with us today. And everyone, hold on to your seats. You're going to have an incredible experience.
Thank you, Juana. What a wonderful introduction. I am so blessed to be with all of you today. I want to first and foremost give a very warm saludo and a big virtual hug to all my Hispanic and Latinx hermanas and hermanos. I am coming to you from Miami, Florida. So I know we're all connected via this extraordinary medium. And that's why I want to talk to you today. So for the next hour, we're going to learn a little bit and we're going to have a little fun. We're going to be able to ask questions and we're going to do some exercises that I think will be illuminating. First and foremost, I want to tell you that leadership is why we're all here, right? So fundamental to leadership is public speaking. It's always been that way since the Greeks started, you know, to look at the power of voice to really galvanize movements and bring people together. So in our worlds, of course, we are all leaders in our respective fields. But now we find ourselves in this special time of pandemic when our world has changed, when the way we communicate is radically changed. Not only has it changed for today, but it is going to change for the long run, because I'm sure we all know that the workplace, the way we interact in our business lives is radically changed. Many companies are not going to bring employees back to a physical workplace. Some people are going to work remotely. There's going to be hybrid teams. The point is, life as we knew it is no longer. So how do we adapt? How do we take our extraordinary power to communicate, inspire, persuade, be change agents that we are, and put them into this rectangle where we find ourselves? Many of you might be already proficient at video apps because, let's say, millennials, Generation Z have grown up in this digital world. However, it doesn't translate exactly to how we use it for business, how we use it to really harness our power and use it as a mode of expressing our brilliance. I'm going to share with you some tidbits from the workshops that I do. I'm going to focus on 2 aspects in particular, the visual cues, how we organize our screens, all the nonverbal elements that populate our screen. I'm going to talk about body language, about facial gestures. You know, we have 100,000 plus ways of gesturing our faces, and they each say something. About hand movements, and then we're going to have a little fun because we're going to try out the Zoom score. Zoom score is something I created to basically let people know how important it is to take this seriously and to check your aptitude to really use the technology to advantage. And I use Zoom as a shortcut, as a placeholder for Microsoft Teams, Skype, GoToMeeting, BlueJeans, whatever platform you use, and there's new out every day. The point is, they all basically are virtual expressions of who we are. So with that, I'm going to invite you to put your questions on the Q&A. We'll do our best to get to as many of them as possible. You're going to be asked to do a poll and rate some rooms, some Zoom rooms of people who are in the public eye. So with that, I'm going to start sharing my screen and we're going to take off and have a really energetic session. I wish I was with you in person. I'd love to see your faces. I know that next year I will have that opportunity if I'm invited back, Juana. So I'm going to share my screen and show you that. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So you see a guy in pajamas, right? Okay. So basically what I want to share is I want to start with the premise, the days of working in our pajamas are over, right? This was okay, maybe March, April, May, when we were just adjusting to this whole pandemic mindset of how do we get through this? No longer, because as a matter of fact, what you wear when you're sitting here looking at the webcam makes a total difference in the way your energy is conveyed. You cannot do a job interview dressed in your pajamas. I'm sorry. You've got to dress even down to the high heels and the dress shoes. So it's time to really step up your game. This would be me, exaggerated. I would never show up this way, right? If you don't turn on your camera, you're missing a great opportunity. You are really missing out. Now, today we have a webinar, which is a different dynamic, but obviously you'd never show up this way. You'd never show up with rollers in your hair and you wouldn't be eating in front of the webcam, right? So how you show up is central to your success because we know as leaders that the first impression is made in the first 7 seconds. 7 seconds, that's all. Anybody who does recruiting and who's done a lot of job interviewing knows that the minute you step into that room to meet with your prospective employer, those 7 seconds really mark you and you don't really have a second chance to make a first impression, right? Early adoption does not necessarily mean success. You might be saying, well, I grew up with an iPhone in my hand. That's different. We're looking at social interactions here. We're talking about leisure. We're talking about cultural interactions. Here we're talking about business, about running for office, right? About establishing your leadership and being an agent of change and social good in your communities. This is so important. Our brains process information through our eyes. The visual is about 90% of what we take in. Imagine 90% of what we take in. So if you're not showing up, you're leaving your power, off the table. You're saying, I don't care, I'm absent, I don't care. Only 10% is auditory. So 90% of what our brains process is visual, 10% is what we hear. So keep that in mind, okay, when we're going through the next few slides. And it's something really, I can't impress more strongly on you, the importance of the visual. There's a silver lining to all that we're doing now. You might say, another Zoom meeting. Why do I have to show up? Why do I have to do this? Well, we know that there are pros and there are many, many, many more pros and cons. Here are some of the ones that we're finding in the place of work in the business world. There's no commuting, right? There's this cleaner air, there's less wear and tear in our cars, less expenses in terms of getting to work and back. It's more economical in terms of resources, right? Companies don't have to put paper in their photocopiers because there is no central photocopier. It's more immersive. And by that, I mean, we're looking at our faces. You're looking at my face probably closer than you would normally. If we were face to face in a physical space, you wouldn't be looking at me this way. We'd be more distant. There would be sort of a protocol, an etiquette in terms of the distance from one person to the other. Here, we're right in our faces. And I know that if you wanted to spotlight me and make me full screen, you could. And that everything on my face would show, every expression, every gesture. It's more immersive, but at the same time, it can be more intimate. But you have to build the trust to get there. More meaningful conversations, because believe it or not, more attentive to each other, we have better attentive and tending behavior, and we are more glued to the screen, so I'm more concentrated on the person to whom I am speaking. It's closer collaboration because teams are huddled into the screen, and there's more of an intense collaboration for project management and teamwork. The cross-functional, so they could be somebody in engineering and somebody in marketing and somebody in sales, these teams are working more effectively together. On the negative side, We know about Zoom gloom, Zoom fatigue. Oh, do I have to get in another meeting? I just spent 8 hours. Oh my God, we know that. As parents, we also know that our children spend an inordinate amount of time online doing their schoolwork. It is the way of the world. There are ways to overcome that. We did some stretching earlier. We did some meditation. We did some breathing. There's many ways of breaking these sessions so that they're shorter, much more concise, much more impactful and effective. The infrastructure is lacking. I'm sure that many of us have experienced a frozen screen, right? Or latency in our audio, where we don't hear the person. There's some kind of an interference. Our homes were not wired for us to do work from home, right? We were probably doing maybe some streaming, right? Some email. But we were not really, when we set up our internet accounts, we weren't saying, oh, I need super high speed, right? I'm going to need super high-fi, Wi-Fi 6, I'm going to need 5G. We didn't think about that. So now we're finding that we have to go back and upgrade our systems so that we can connect without interruption. Technical glitches come with the fact that we haven't really developed the full competence in how we use these platforms. And mind you, I've been immersed in this since early this year. I've just mastered Zoom, but I'm not so sure about Skype. I'm not so sure about GoToMeeting, about WebEx, about BlueJeans. They all have different functionalities, different clicks and different places to accomplish different things. You have to practice. You have to practice. Loss of privacy because our homes are our spaces are sort of physically imposed upon by the eyes that are looking at me. By that, I mean that if I didn't have a green screen behind me, which I use for training purposes, because I don't want you to be distracted by what's around me, but you're looking at my home. You're looking at what's on my walls. You're looking at the decorations that are nearby. You're looking at really my whole environment, which sometimes I invite you to come and visit my home. But today I want to talk to you in a more focused environment. So we do lose some privacy and lack of mobility and socialization. Of course, we're stuck at home. We're not getting around very much. So we know what that does to our psyche and our emotional state. Here is a quick visual speakers checklist. Okay, we're becoming visual speakers. Visual, eye first, and then auditory second. And I love dogs. And ordinarily my dog would be here with me, except that the guys are mowing the lawn outside, and then he starts to bark, and then we'd be interrupted. Then I have to say, excuse me, I have to take my dog out. But he is here in spirit in this slide. He's not here actually. He's much, much nicer, much more beautiful than this one. So we see a doggy chat. Turn on your video. Know your equipment. Get camera ready. I would never sit here in front of anyone without at least having combed my hair and put a little lipstick on, right? Create a dedicated space in your home so that you know that when you sit in the front of the camera, you turn it on, you're in a place that's worthy of your brand, of your image. Make yourself heard. Make sure you have good microphone, that you have a good audio system that captures your voice clearly. Set an agenda. Mark your time. Make these brief but potent. And anticipate that something will go wrong. There will always be technical glitches. There could be a power outage here, and then I have to go to my hotspot. It will happen, and we just have to roll with it and make the most of it, knowing that everybody's in the same boat, right? Now, let's look at some common mistakes. We've all done this. We still do. Many of us still do this. Let me tell you why you need to correct. So we're looking at the gentleman on the left. He fortunately is not a client of mine, but he's looking down at the camera, which is clearly a laptop. He has a bathrobe on. We're seeing his ceiling fixtures. There's nothing behind him that accentuates or augments or complements in any way who he is, right? So he's just like showing up, right? It's like saying, I don't care enough to actually get dressed, but I'm here because I have to be here. No good. The person on the right is a client of mine. This is the before and after. So Cynthia was looking at me, but with the light behind her, backlight. So couldn't see her face. I call this the shadow creature. Shadow creatures don't really inspire a lot of confidence, right? Because unless you can see the person's eyes, you really can't build trust, right? You can't really bond with that person unless you can look into their eyes. So I simply asked her, okay, turn around, do 180 degrees. You're looking at the window. You've got natural light, which is the best light of all. So now I can see your face. What a simple adjustment. And it made a world of difference in the way she was showing up on the screen. You'd be surprised. There's still many people I work with who show up on our first meeting looking like shadow creatures. Don't be a shadow creature. This gentleman is also a client of mine. He's a public speaker. He's a member of, actually champion public speaker from the National Speakers Association. So he was, in our first meeting, he was, as he appears in the before, he was just like the gentleman in the blue bathrobe, looking down, but not as much. He had a light behind him. He had clutter and messy walls. And I really couldn't, he wasn't a shadow creature, but he was like, why are you here? You're not this powerful motivational speaker that you claim to be. Show me how you can change my life. Show me how your words and your story can illuminate me. Well, on the right side, in the after, you see how he already inspires you in his poise, in his body language, in the use of audiovisual. He took out that display monitor. He said, let's use this instead of PowerPoint slides. Let me share the physical screen so that I can spend more time on the actual screen interacting with the audience. Brilliant. We shaped up his bookcase to have books that are sort of to speak to his theme. And we put some elements on there, some decorative elements, some inspirational sayings that again speak to his brand. I don't think you have to dig very deep to see what a world of difference this made, right? Hands, body language. Look at Tim Cook, the gentleman with the gray hair. He has what I call the steeple hands, which is usually a sign of gratitude, right? It's an om in many circles. However, it's also a sign of, in a way, acquiescence. It is now a powerful pose. It is actually a weaker pose. So this is called the high steeple. There's another one, which is pyramid hands, which goes like this. This one is more of a acknowledgement of more authoritative, but here it's as if he's the top guy at Apple. So he is choosing to show up this way. Similarly, he is choosing in a congressional hearing to show up with the thinker pose, which could be interpreted as I'm bored, or a sort of transparent effort to really show that I'm paying attention. You can take it either way. Neither of them are highly recommended. But again, these are just examples. We're just touching the tip of the iceberg, okay? This is just a drop in the ocean of what we would need to cover and what you would need to learn to really be a masterful speaker on Zoom. Arnold Schwarzenegger. He has been doing a lot of interviews lately. Of course, he is the Terminator. And he uses his hands very aggressively, right? As would go with the Terminator profile. In this interview, he is showing his hands way too aggressively, and he's not factoring in that when you approach the camera, your hands are going to be magnified. They're going to look really much bigger than they already are. So it could be an intimidating pose, but given who he is, it may work for him. He's really emphatic. He's excited. He is really trying to impose on you how important what he's saying could be for you, right? How he can change your life. So that's another powerful one. See how just within this very limiting rectangle, see all the things that you can do just by knowing how to use your hands. The gentleman at the bottom is head of Cisco, and he is using a gesture that is called the box. So the box is a way of sort of putting context on something. So let me explain how the next Supreme Court justice will change our lives. Well, I think I've used different gestures for that one. The idea is that he is framing his argument. Okay, so this is a powerful way of using your hands to establish, let me tell you what I'm going to tell you, right? So again, there's dozens of these kinds, which you can implement effectively if you frame yourself from the waist up, allowing your hands to be in the frame, okay? So another important thing is the breathing. With your posture comes breathing. And I don't have to tell many of you who practice yoga how important breathing is. Breathing for every aspect of our ability to shine, the breathing is central. How we breathe, where we breathe from, diaphragm breathing is so important. There's people who just teach breathing for public speaking, by the way. So your posture actually has an influence on your vocal tone and quality and cadence, believe it or not. You might want to try this sometime. You can record yourself in different positions, record yourself just audio, and then hear the subtle differences in how your voice comes through. Read the same paragraph and see if you notice differences in the way your voice conveys. It will make a difference. So if you're sitting upright, you are in erect position, your body, you're breathing properly from your diaphragm, you're square shouldered, you have it's a power pose. I wish we could stand up and talk to each other on video. There's ways of doing that, but it requires a little bit of technical, more sophistication. The point is the body language matters greatly. Your face, I mentioned about 100,000 expressions, right? Look at just these basic ones. These are the fundamental ones that emote happiness, sadness, disgust, surprise, contempt, anger, and fear. So you can see in males and females how those can manifest differently, right? The eyebrows, the mouth, everything from the chin. We have so many muscles in our faces, we don't even know what they are, what to call them, but they all matter. So what I want to impress upon you is that, yes, we can practice these in a mirror. And I'm not suggesting that you suddenly adopt gestures that are not natural to you. They need to be natural, they need to be authentic, but just be aware of how you are communicating non-verbally is my point. So with these expressions, the eye contact is probably the most important. The smile. The smile is a very, very powerful gesture. A smile can be used to denote acknowledgement, respect, agreement. It can be a sign of deference, but the smile is something that unifies people across cultures and across languages, universally. The smile travels all around the globe, right? And it establishes us as humans all sharing the same pain points and the same points of joy. Appropriate attire, how you dress, of course, also has the nonverbal component, and good grooming. Good grooming, again, with men, the shaving and so forth. With women, of course, we know basic grooming. We don't really need to practice that. But what I'm saying is, just make sure that your hair is combed. I keep a mirror next to my workspace, and I'm always checking to make sure there's no weird hair out of place. Those little things, again, they're magnified on the screen. And again, please note your questions, because I'm going to be sort of going quickly because I want to make sure we have time for our exercise. Another set of expressions which we take for granted, the ear pull. Some of us play with our ears or our earrings. It could be a sign of discomfort. You may be a little bit unsure. You might be anxious for this to be over with. You may be thinking about something else. Your nose touching. I didn't know this until recently, that scratching your nose is sort of like the Pinocchio effect, which has actually a physiological component. When we lie, I mean, the Pinocchio didn't just happen out of somebody's imagination. Apparently there is something physiologically where our noses enlarge. There's some kind of like, we get more sort of fluid in our noses and our mucous membranes engorge, and when we're lying. And so therefore comes the Pinocchio kind of myth or expression, where we are then not necessarily being truthful, but when we scratch our noses, it somehow can convey that we're not really telling the truth. So watch that one. And then the eye rub, of course, we know that that's something we see our children do. They're tired, they're sleepy, it's nap time. Or it's timeout time, but we do get tired. It's natural for our eyes to get dry, particularly when we're looking at an LED screen all day. But again, sometimes it also denotes that you're sort of fed up. It's time to move on, right? But again, notice how these things can say something that you either intend or you don't intend. Green screen or living set. This is something I'm asked about very, very often. Again, I told you why I'm using the green screen today. I have a physical green screen that rolls up behind me because I want your eyes to be on me and nothing else. If I didn't have the green screen behind me, I would have what you see in the right side top. That's my living set. That's how I arrange elements in my workspace, so that if I had a more informal interaction with you, you would see that I have my sunflowers. By the way, it's a very popular flower because of the color. It translates well to the screen. You see my embroidered pillows from India. You see my Venezuelan tapestry. You see my ficus plant. Natural elements, green, organic things. All of this has a lot to do with the feng shui of our composition. If any of you follow the energy, the chi energy that's in feng shui, you know when something looks good. When you walk into someone's house, you know that something is either nice or not, right? You know that when you see a photograph, that something is either well composed, well done, or not. You may not know what's off, but you will know that you like it. So similarly, all these elements, all the elements that derive from nature, have a lot to do with the way we perceive the harmony in the composition of something. So I encourage you all to try to find an organic element. Like it can be something living. It can be silk flowers, like mine are silk, but it can also be something that's textile, something that's organic, a tapestry. So that's important. If I were to go with the green screen in a sort of hokey, gimmicky way, like the White House behind me, obviously, that's not a very relevant setting for me to be in. So that would cast doubts on my credibility, right? Typically, that's not a good way to show up. Similarly, I don't want to see anybody these days showing up with the Golden Gate Bridge behind you, which is a Zoom default background, because unless you are in San Francisco or you're near the San Francisco or the Golden Gate Bridge, please don't use it. The person on the left is a basketball player, so clearly he benefited greatly from creating a very, very appropriate thematic virtual set for himself, because he's a basketball player. So this one's particularly effective. We talked about harmony. We talked about the rules of composition. This is something we know we know from experience. We've all taken thousands, if not millions of photographs. We know when something is composed properly. I want to bring you to the fundamental rules of good photography. There's something called the rule of thirds, or the golden rule. It's usually the way we take a grid and we organize elements in the grid. So similarly, you can say that in any shot, when you're setting your shot up for your video, you want your eyes to be in the upper line, so the upper third, so that it becomes a third and then 2/3. Okay, of composition. So that if you organize your shots so that your eyes are in that upper horizontal line, you will be pretty much in good compositional harmony. Okay, you talk about focus, depth of field, exposure, all these are things that you can control with your equipment. Let your set complement your message. I talked about that in the example I gave of my own set. The gentleman on the left bottom is a client of mine. His name is Bob Bonin. He's a folk guitarist. He was working and doing concerts from his home, but he was doing it in a place that didn't make any sense. He was just like a blank wall. So I said, Bob, take out some of your guitars, hang them on the wall, give me a sense of what you do for a living. What is your passion? So he did that, and automatically, just by doing that, he established what he does for a living, what he offers us with his art. Jose Andres, Chef Jose Andres, the marvelous, magical Chef Jose Andres, loves to feed people. He loves people by feeding them. So he does his TV interviews largely in his place of work, which is where he's feeding hundreds and thousands of people who are going through crisis. So what better way to show up than with a huge paella dish? I want to also mention that even though we're working with sight and sound, you can introduce these other it suggests these other elements, which we can't, of course, access on a virtual screen. You can suggest them with smell. You can have flowers, you can have silk flowers, you can have natural flowers. We all know what roses smell like. So if they're in the frame, if they're in your composition, we can remember what it smells like. We remember what an orange smells like and what it tastes like, right? We know that if we have a fuzzy pillow, you know what, that's tactile, that's touch. So we can introduce and stage our living set, which is what I call it, with all these elements to remind our brains that we're working with all five senses, even though they might not be accessible to us. Oops, and let's not forget to make meetings fun. We can make them fun. This is an example from Zoom. Zoom came out with these virtual filters. They're available in the 5.2 version and the 5.3. So if you download the latest version, you will see where you can access virtual backgrounds. There's something called virtual filters. So you can put a little sort of Frida Kahlo flower headdress on. You can do a masked mustache, a goatee. You can do dozens, and they keep adding to these. So you can make it playful so the meetings don't have to be so serious. So you can counter some of that Zoom gloom and Zoom fatigue by bringing some levity and laughter. What happens when we laugh? When we laugh, we breathe better. What happens when we laugh? We relax. What happens when we laugh? We all share in the joy of the moment together. So it bonds us closer. So let's not forget to introduce some fun and playfulness into our virtual meetings, right? Let's talk about Zoom score. So before we get into our sort of rate the rooms I'm going to show you, I want to go over the basics. There's 10 points that I created, which are sort of 10 fundamentals. Now, we're looking at just the visual part right here, because we're only able to judge rooms that are in a static form, right? I'm going to show you screen grabs of celebrities, public figures who show up on our cable news every day or who are in the public eye. So they're fair game. But these are the 10 points I want you to look for. Okay, so as you're asked to rate the rooms we're going to see, these are the 10 points I want you to look for. So sharpness of the image, overall composition, framing. Is the person framed properly in the shot? Is there proper lighting? This is something that most people still don't get right. Eye level. Am I seeing the person at eye level as if I were standing in the same room with that person? Background choice. Remember, we talked about tacky backgrounds that don't necessarily speak to who you are. Background styling. Is it messy, or does it just augment who we are? Does it speak for us? Distance from the camera. Some people get too close or some people get too far. Attire and wardrobe. Of course, we know how important that is already. We've seen some bad examples. And the personal appearance overall. You know, are you showing up as your best? Are you at your top of your game? Are you ready to win votes? To, you know, when you're running for office, are you ready to win that proposal and that funding? Are you ready to get that job, right? Are you ready to sell that big plan or that big project to a client? Are you ready to transact business where you're establishing your leadership and you're moving the needle, right? So these are the 10 points. So with that, Jackie, I think we're ready to launch our poll. Well, actually, yeah, good. Okay, but I'm sorry, there's one more. I also want to show that even the tech titans, even the big guys who have gazillions of billions of dollars, don't always get it right. And I think based on the criteria that I just shared, the 10 points, Zuckerberg looks like, where the heck is he? He could be a hostage in some kind of, I don't know, in Afghanistan somewhere. He doesn't say anything to me about being, the inventor, the guru of Facebook. Jeff Bezos has a yellow haze over him. Why? Sundar Pichai, who's the top guy at Google, pretty much has a little bit of, he has a little textured background, some kind of like weird looking plastic plant. And then again, our friend Tim Cook is doing the steeple, okay, I don't know what he's trying to do with that, but he has some plants that look like they were plucked out of the gardens over in front of Apple headquarters. Like somebody said, oh my God, we need something organic. Run over to the front, pull something out from the front landscaping and put it there. Sorry, it didn't work. And they got a lot of criticism online because saying, wait, you guys have all the resources in the world and you still can't get this right? Plus, this was probably one of the most high stakes performances of their careers because they were doing testimony before Congress, okay? And with efforts to, of course, sort of rule back and go with anti-monopoly regulation to curtail the power of our social platforms. So with that, let's launch the poll. This is our first contestant. So looking at Matthew Iglesias, he is an author. He's just published some important work regarding demography and Hispanic power. He is a highly celebrated thinker, but this is the way he showed up to talk about his latest book and his research. So if you would kindly rate on a scale of 1 to 10, how you think that Matthew shows up on the screen. At the end of the polling, we're going to look at how you scored Matthew. Ready?
Rosemary, can you put up the 10 facts? Because I don't know if they know them from the poll.
Okay,
Or
well,
you could read them, like say number one. So
it's
forth.
okay. I can go back to them. Yeah. So if you've gotten a good look at him, okay, sharpness of image, composition, proper lighting, eye level, background choice, background styling, distance from the camera, attire, and personal appearance. Okay, so how would you rate Matthew based on those 10 points? I don't see anyone, Jackie, are people active on the poll?
I don't see any voting.
You can't vote. It doesn't let you vote.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, we can't submit. Why?
Like you said, there's technical problems.
Yeah, you have to read.
But we're doing really well.
Okay, let's try it again. I'm going to relaunch it. So it's supposed to be multiple choice where you click.
You click 1 to 10, right?
Yeah, you click 1 to 10 and see, oh, you have to rate all of the examples. Okay, so
Oh,
yes,
you have to,
Rosemary has several examples. So I'm going to end the polling. No, I'll leave the polling open. And Rosemary, do you want to go through, show the other pictures?
Sure, yeah, the idea was to do each one. However, I do that unless we did it in the chat, but then there's too many of you. There's 142 of you.
Yeah.
Well,
Can you pop your number for this guy? For who's this, Matthew? Can you pop that number in the chat? I'm sorry, I know.
This is the thing. I mean, our participants, or for me to do the Zoom score? Because it is relevant. It is subjective, I should say, and it's relevant to the occasion. So I would give him a 2 out of 10. But some people might think, well, it doesn't really matter because he's not supposed to look great. He's not an anchor. He is just he's a researcher. So it's not that critical. But some people might think that he's a 5 out of 10. But I think that he blew an opportunity because he didn't really take the time to, let me give you my analysis, and maybe we can tweak the poll in the meantime. If not, we'll wing it.
Yeah.
So with Matthew, and by the way, you can go to getyourzoomscore.com and you can get your own score afterwards. Okay, so you can do that when we finish our session or tomorrow or tonight. So it's easy to remember, getyourzoomscore.com. So with Matthew, let me tell you, and I'll use my my cursor to show you what I mean. So he is very poorly lit. Okay, he's lit primarily from the monitor light. There's a light in the back in his kitchen that is very distracting because it serves no purpose. Plus, it's a warm light, it's a yellow light. So it's like, what is that supposed to be? The kitchen is not necessarily the most attractive. Kitchens can look nice. And a lot of people who are talking heads on cable are using kitchens, but very stylized kitchens. So there's some kind of nondescript artwork behind his head that doesn't say anything about him. There's shades that are apparently drawn just to keep the light out, but it looks like it was just pulled very randomly. The pillows don't say anything. He's at a very odd wide angle, so it makes his head look bigger than it is. He's got a microphone that should not necessarily be that visible. I mean, you can have the microphone, a little bit of the microphone visible, but it's like this humongous microphone. And this glare on the glasses, which is very difficult to get rid of. You have to have lighting from above. So that's forgivable because it's very difficult to counter. There's no such thing as anti-glare glasses, by the way. There's anti-glare glasses as it relates to the damage the blue light from the screen does to your eyes, but there's no such thing as avoiding the glare from light when you're on the screen. So I would say I would give him a 2. He missed an opportunity. He could have he could have moved his table or his computer to have the screen behind him. He could have put some decorative pillows. He might have put a plant here right? He might have put some kind of Latino themed poster here. He would have taken this light off. So there's many things. Just my point is that we don't need to spend money. I want to always encourage people to work with what you have first. You don't need to run out and buy fancy equipment. You don't need to go out and buy lights. You'd be surprised what you can do with what you have on hand. The examples from clients I've coached earlier in this presentation were achieved with what they had on hand, and you can do it too. Well, can we go to the next one then? You know Julissa. So Julissa, oh, I wish I could see what you're, see, Jackie, is there a way to get people, maybe put some numbers in the screen so you can sort of read out what people are saying? Let's see if I can open the chat. No? Do we have a sense of how people are? Well, we'll go. Actually, the chat just disappeared from my screen. So maybe because you're running the poll. Let's keep going. Julissa looks great. I would give her a 10 out of 10. And let me tell you why. Julissa looks great. She is well groomed. The color looks beautiful on her, this dusty pink. She has flowers. I can smell the roses. She has a bookcase. Now, people love to use bookcases. There's a website and Twitter handle in the UK that's called Bookcase Credibility. And Bookcase Credibility looks at the bookcases behind famous people who are doing interviews. And you'd be surprised, there's people who actually go out of their way to put the spines for books that speak to who they are. And obviously, Julissa has done that. She's done that in a subtle way, right? She has a Taco's cookbook. You'll be able to see some titles that speak to her Latinidad. But some people, go out of their way. If they've written a book, you'll see that they put the cover of the book facing the camera, but she does it very subtly. I like the way she took the ivy and she hung it behind her. So it cascades and it gives, oh, we are able to do the poll. Yes? So now we see Matthew. Okay. So could we end the Matthew poll and do Julissa's? I already gave her away, but. This is still Matthew. Okay, we'll go to the next one then. Maybe we can get this in place for Maria Hinojosa, who's next. Okay, so Julissa, as you can see, she is to me just beautifully put together. There is a sense of another room here, but it's not distracting. There's something about things that you can't identify. If you have something weird that's in the frame that you can't identify, that's going to be distracting. But you see part of an image which looks like a skyscraper. It could be New York City, but it doesn't distract me. It's just enough of a suggestion, but it doesn't like pull my eye away. Okay, let's go to the next Zoom score. Maria Hinojosa. She's been doing a lot of interviews lately. So how would you rate Maria, our friend Maria? 2, 4, 5. Let's see. Let's give more seconds. Look at what's behind her. Look at her color choices. By the way, color, while we wait for the poll to, color is extraordinarily important. Color is also a strong nonverbal cue. Red, orange notes, purple, authority, credibility. There's a lot of different ways that color can work for us. What we has a lot to do not only with how we comes our skin tone, hair color, how we convey a message choices. So how did we do with Maria? So do we have a result, Jackie?
Yep, 6 was the highest with 22%, and then 5 and 7 came in close behind, both at 21%.
Okay, wonderful. So no one gave her a 9 or a, well, she really didn't rate a 9 or a 10. I'll tell you why. Did you notice this graphic right here? What is that? Unless I don't know what it is. I know it's important to her because she chose it as her background, but it looks sexual to me. It looks like they're like, I don't know, about to have sex or something. Very distracting. I'm sure it's important to her, but how does it enhance what Maria has to say? And what Maria has to say is very important. It's distracting to me. It's like immediately when I chose this for this exercise, I said, what the heck is she doing? She looks great. Her colors are bold, vibrant, energetic. Her camera angle is a little too low. Okay, I would have wanted her to raise the camera. Why? Because you see here, we're seeing the edge of her ceiling, and you see the ragged edge of a bad paint job on the ceiling. Okay, so that's distracting. And then you see this very distracting graphic. So I would give her actually a 5. Okay, here we go with José Balart, who we see on NBC Universal, Telemundo. He's working from his home here. How would you rate José Díaz Balart? I'm seeing 5, 6. I think the 5 bar is larger, wider than the others. So he doesn't rate top. He's also not at the bottom, but he's sort of in the middle, right? For the sake of time.
Right. Yep.
Okay, good. So
yep, 5.
He doesn't look bad, pink on him, but he shows what is this thing in the background. He's got 2 pieces of art which aren't necessarily well hung. They look like they're crooked. They don't really say anything. They're like just floating on this huge white wall. There's a keyboard here, but it's not a keyboard on a piano. It's just a keyboard on a table. So he could have put something here. He could have put something here, a plant or some kind of ceramic, some kind of a piece of sculpture. This plant could have gone here, right? The books don't really say orca, whatever, but the books are nondescript, right? So this is like unidentifiable. He's not well lit. He has lighting from one side, not from direct front. He could have used a light source here off camera. He has a light switch. Don't let people see your light switches. They're very distracting. So it's like, he really didn't think about this. Now, this is a guy who could have some cameraman, producer from Telemundo come to his house and just drop off this equipment and say, okay, this is your kit, do it. But either it wasn't important to him, or he didn't have time to set it up, or what have you. The point is, we expect more from José Díaz Balart, right? And he's not showing it.
Rosemary, can you tell some people who he is if you want to go back?
Oh, I'm sorry. José Díaz Balart is news anchor at NBC Universal, Telemundo. He is, José Díaz Balart is very well known because he does both English and Spanish language work. He is the evening anchor on the Telemundo evening news. Okay, he is based in Miami. He's part of the Balart family. Several members of Congress come from that family. He's also very prominent on the NBC news stations because of his ability to speak to the Latino experience, but in perfect English. So that's who he is.
So one thing I would suggest to people is that they consider who the person is as well, because you expect more from somebody of his prominence. So that's all
Correct.
I wanted to stress.
Correct. Now, and that's an extremely important point. What we're saying is that this is all relative, it's subjective, right? Because it's a matter of context. So we're looking at him out of context, which is why I'm saying it's not really a fair assessment. But again, this is all by way of giving you insights as to what you can do in your own screenshot. Jose Quiñones, if you don't know him, his career has evolved mostly in the English language world. He's been around for a long time. He's very highly regarded and multi-award winner in journalism circles, multiple prizes in NAHJ and in many other broadcast journalism organizations. So he is sort of a source of pride for Latinos in the English language world. He did a lot of work for The View. So how would you rate our friend John Quiñones? Is the poll active, Jackie?
Yes.
Okay.
It is, yep.
Good, so he's rating high. He's rating 8 or 9.
Correct.
Because, okay, so this is another thing that's very, very lovely to see. He's humanizing the screen. He's humanizing the screen. He is showing us a little bit of his world. Photos, we don't know who they are, but we can pretty much get this photo means something to him. It's a special memory. It's a special person in his life. So he's giving us a peek into his private life, right? He might have maybe there's a clock that has some kind of special value. Maybe it was a gift or an award for some professional accomplishment. He's giving us also a peek into his home, a little bit of into a well-organized, attractive, warm glow in the rest of his house. What he didn't see is that this is he has a circle light here, which is reflecting on the glass. It's okay, it's forgivable. So clearly he has good lighting because he chose to use a circle light to illuminate his face. But he has a good bookcase. The bookcase isn't like this in the center or the centerpiece. He's not wowing us with the spines and the titles of the books, but he's giving us a sense of, I'm an intellectual, I'm a thinking person, I'm cultured, and I have a personal life, and I'm sharing that with you. Okay, our last example is Representative Debbie Murkisel-Powell. She's a representative from state of Florida, member of Congress. How would you rate her room?
Wow, 8 is off to a strong head start. And again, if anyone wants to rate a 10, scroll down and then you'll see the 10. I'm not saying to score 10, I'm just saying I've had a couple of comments, people didn't know where the 10 was.
Okay.
8 is still in the lead,
Good.
although it's narrowing. I think that's it.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, she's almost a 10. You might say, well, she's not in focus, but obviously I pulled these either from the air, taking a photograph from my screen, or these are pulled from other sources. So she wouldn't be obviously out of focus, but this is almost a little bit too well constructed. Let's take it apart. She's dressed very professionally. She matches her background. She has a very light colored, very inviting couch. It's not too big, not too small. She has family photos in the background. She has orchids. She has an attractive piece of art in the background, right? She has some artifacts here. So she's suggesting that this is really a living room that you might be welcome to join at some point. You're coming into her home. She is not overly made up, but she's highly well groomed. It's well framed, well composed. So I would give this either a 9 or a 10. Okay. I'm going to share the screen last. I'm going to stop sharing screen in a moment so we can have some questions and I can answer hopefully in the time we have remaining. My mini Zoom camp, the next date is the 14th. Just go to Mini Zoom Camp 2020 at Eventbrite, or just go to my website, rosemaryravinal.com. Connect with me. You'll see all my social handles there. Follow me. I do weekly newsletters. I post a ton of stuff on a blog there's practical, useful information, how to up your Zoom game, how to up your Zoom score. This is an opportunity for you to say, okay, I'm really going to exert my leadership. I'm going to really show my brilliance, my power, my authority, how I will change the world and do it in the screen. Hopefully sometime next year, we will be able to go back to the physical world. But for now, this is what we have and we need to make the most of it. Let's not leave it to chance. Let's not let other people take our power from us. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and I will look forward to your questions. And Juana, I know there's a break afterwards, but let's see, you tell me when we need to stop.
Well, I would like to go ahead because I've seen so many people on the chat. Let's go ahead and take 5 minutes for questions, if that's good.
Okay, wonderful.
One of the first questions, Rosemary, was, is the Zoom camp presented in Spanish at all?
Ah, interesting. It's right now, the 3 sessions are in English, but if there's enough demand, and please write me to that effect, I will do a companion piece. This is 90 minutes, okay? It's $49. It's very, very affordable. I would do a companion in another date in October or November. I would do that in Spanish. So if there's demand, I would do that. What I do is after people go through my workshops, then there's more of a master class, which is a more deep dive, which is 6 hours, 3 hours, and 3 hours with one-on-one time with me. That comes afterwards. And that is available in January in English and in Spanish. But you've given me a very good suggestion. I will take that to heart. And likely I will announce then something in Spanish only for later this fall. Thank you.
Great. So you had some people ask that question and then others responded positively to you saying that's a great idea. Another question, what lighting equipment do people use? Any recommendations for best equipment?
Sure. I can share that with all of you afterwards. Juan and Jackie, I can send you the equipment list. The point is, right now I have an LED lamp that I made a diffuser out of lining fabric, which is basically diffuses the light. And then I use natural light, but I also have a ring light. You can go on Amazon, and for less than $30, you can buy very, very good effective lighting, but you need to play around with it depending on if you're going to use a bit of natural light, if you're going to use overhead lights with your light. There may be places where it might be too hot for you to have two lights. There are LED lights that come on a tripod that you can do a double set for less than $29. The ring light is very popular, but it tends to get hot. And if you have a large space, the ring light really just focuses on your face. It comes in different widths. Then if you have a laptop, there's something called the Loom Cube, which has a suction cup attachment to the back of the device, and that just basically attaches to the top of your laptop, so you can take it on and off depending on whether you're doing Zoom or not. So the Loom Cube is probably the most expensive one of the three that I mentioned. That's probably about $99. But if you're moving, you're working in different spaces, if you're doing a co-work space, or you're moving about to different locations, that might be the best investment, because then you can take it with you and portable. The only thing is that you have to charge it because it's battery operated, so you have to be sure, just like with earbuds, that it's fully charged.
So we will be sending out that list to people. So for things like that, maybe we should take questions that if there's any that have to do more with their own style or something that elaborates the presentation, that would be good.
Oh, sure. I have three ladies on here, Robin, Victoria, and Alicia. Where did she go? Robin, if you would like to unmute yourself, are you able to ask Rosemary? You don't have to turn on your video. There's no pressure.
You can just read the questions, Jackie, because we're...
Okay, so Robin's question was, are you using a green screen for your background?
Yes, I said that earlier. Yes, I'm using a green screen, which I chose. I made this myself. It's a gradient background, just something you can pull from Canva. You can do on PowerPoint. I do this because I want your attention on me. I don't want distractions of things that are in my environment. So I chose to do it this way. Plus, it's also branded, because obviously this is what I do for a living. So I want you to remember who I am. The other thing that's clever that you might consider is, if you have a beautiful place in your garden or in your home somewhere, but the lighting isn't quite right, you can actually photograph it, take a very, very high definition photograph of it, and then create a PowerPoint slide that will become your virtual background. So you can trick us into thinking that you're actually in your garden, but you're not. But it is really it's an authentic, it's a real space, your world, but your conditions don't allow you to be in your garden, but you're bringing it to us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Rosemary, can you explain to them, because I didn't know this, when you use a virtual background, you kind of disappear and move and stuff. So why is it important? Like, that's why I have this background of my home, because then you see me and I don't move. But if I have a virtual background, it doesn't come in clearly. Can you explain why that's so important?
The green screen that I'm using, I shouldn't be too fuzzy, because it allows the webcam that you have. I have a Logitech 9, which is a more high-end webcam. It has something called edge definition. So it detects where my body stops and where the background starts, right? But if you use a virtual background without a green screen, then I'm sure you've seen this, you're going to be like a hologram. You sort of float and melt into the background, and it's very distracting. So, but generally, if you're using a green screen, you should not move very much. You should not have I wouldn't recommend it for people who are doing, for example, yoga or dance. It's best to keep movements very more controlled. But so again, if you're going to use a virtual background, make sure that you use a green screen, or just create a living set that defines or augments your style. One more question?
One more question, and then we're
Okay.
going to have a little Zumba break.
Victoria
To go
has a
on with the
question.
Zumba score.
Victoria's question says, I have a small home and struggle to find space to have a Zoom meeting. What do you suggest?
Sure. If there's no natural place for you to, I mean, even a corner, even some people have been going into closets and creating little spaces in a closet. Of course, you have to bring really good lighting in there. You could have a actual room divider screen, you know, the ones that you see, they're very popular in Asia, for example, but you can get at a home furnishing store a very neutral background, a 3-part, which you can fold up when you're finished, and then you can put out behind you. So you're not going green screen, you're going into you're creating a little nook for yourself that's defined by your 3-part background screen, folding screen, that then you move and you create that. But you make sure that you have good lighting, that you have, at least if you don't have a place where you can have a sound, no distractions, no background sounds, try to find a microphone that's noise canceling, or use a headset if you have to, because then all the background sounds of children playing and cars passing won't necessarily be picked up by the microphone as much. Okay, so there are ways of using the technology, picking your technology so that you are able to work in the space that you have available. Okay, so don't let your given space limit you. Be creative. You know, you can think out of the box in a sense, but again, make it comfortable, make it work for you, make it a place where you can exercise your power and show the brilliant person that you are. So with that, I'm going to say what a privilege it's been to talk to you today. I hope to see you in person sometime next year. Juana and Lideramos, thank you for this beautiful opportunity to share my expertise with you. Please feel free to email me if there's any questions that were left unanswered today. I wish you health. I wish you strength. I wish you nothing but prosperity. And adelante. Thank you.
Rosemary, what a wonderful job. Let's all clap virtually.